My name's Zio, and welcome once again to another Coffee with Zio. This is a more free-form, unscripted, podcasty sort of thing that we like to do on the channel each month. Also, there's not going to be much in the way of supporting visuals here, so put the sucker on in the background while you go do chores or whatever. So this is where we discuss the current state of PSO2 New Genesis, as well as let you know what else I've been up to. So, Retem, where do I even start? I guess I'll start by giving the update a solid 8 out of 10. I feel like this should have been rolled out alongside Alio at the very beginning. They did tease it at the end of Chapter 1. I feel like the production value felt a bit more polished this time, from the music to the cutscenes. Speaking of which, they really need to add a feature that lets us watch previous story cutscenes like base PSO2 had. So as of now, if you wanted to watch old cutscenes, you had to go through the story again on another character. Just another missing quality of life feature. When this thing first came out, we had no catalog, no titles, no works card, no shop pass, get bent free to play people. So we got titles, we got the fashion catalog, aka the lookbook, but we're still missing ARCs cards. Personal quarters they said would be a while. The music in this region felt like a real step up, especially the vocal tracks that played during a couple of the cutscenes and during some of the fights. Real bangers here. I was like, yo, we Macross now? The enemies all felt unique and fun to fight, like you can't just unga bunga smash the yellow circle every time. You actually have to put in work to break the body parts to expose the weak point. I felt like this was a really nice change. Let's see, hunters can unga bunga even harder. Rangers can use weak bullet with launchers now. The casting classes all got some nice changes to go along with their new spells. Forces got a skill that increases damage on downed enemies, and Tekker got a skill that heals everyone and restores their PP and gives everyone 50 PP. If you remember at 12 from base PSO2, they had a skill that did exactly that. Gunner got some really good stuff here too. The side quests made Retem feel more lived in than Alio did. You have a better sense for their struggle against the dolls. There's one scene in the main story that does a really good job of driving that home too. It's also a reminder of everyone that's died to the dolls, not just in Retem but in the other regions too. The cocoons were also a lot of fun, and I can see they're really figuring out how to better utilize those. But my only real complaint though is that this open world still feels woefully underutilized. Like for example, you have the pyramid that could have been a dungeon of sorts. Like, what's the deal with that pyramid? What's the deal with some of the other weird set pieces strewn about Alio and Retem? Not every tree or grain of sand or blade of grass has to have a backstory. But still, what's the deal with all the weird machinery though? I want more things to be able to make more videos about in this world. The new Genesis lore thing I called Halpha Historia, but right now, there isn't a whole lot of Halpha to Historia. We're still in the process of gathering resources for the central cannon that we're going to use to shoot the Dark Falls, but we're not going to see the payoff to that until about this time next year, I'd imagine. So here's how I see this playing out. We fire the cannon, it doesn't quite destroy the Dark Falls, so we have to go inside of it. Then we encounter Garoa, who's all funky looking from being partially merged with the Dark Falls. We fight Garoa, and then he somehow comes back to his senses because of Aina. Garoa tells us that this Dark Falls isn't really a Dark Falls, and he tells us where the dolls came from. Then that sets up episode 2. So this is where the floating towers would come into play if they haven't already by then. So we use those to travel subspace and track down who or what created this mess in the first place. I could be totally wrong, but it's still fun to speculate though. I still say this game has huge potential, but it's going to take a while for it to be realized. I think if they figure out how to best utilize the open world and put the same energy into it as they did base PSO2, this could be one of the best free-to-play games out there. I think Genshin Impact is one of the best case studies for this in recent years. I didn't really get into it personally, but its success can't be ignored though. If SEGA manages to pair PSO2's unparalleled character customization with Genshin Impact's gameplay and world building, they'd have a juggernaut on their hands for sure. It could go on to be one of the best free-to-play games on the market, no question. You know, it's like Tony Robbins said, success leaves clues. Go figure out what someone who's successful did and model it. You know, besides their monetization system, what can SEGA learn from MiHoYo here? Then eventually both companies could start learning from one another on their respective games, much like Square Enix and Blizzard. Speaking of Square Enix, I really did enjoy my trip through Endwalker. I already made a video on my experience with that though. They finally stopped selling the game this past week. They're like, go home, go away, go play something else, Eorzea is full. One of the biggest Hail Marys in gaming history turned into one of the wildest cases of suffering from success. So with this update, should you come back to the game? And the truth is, I can't answer that for you. If you didn't like what the game had to offer in Aleo, then chances are you won't like what it has to offer in this new region. It's pretty much more of the same. Like myself, the content in Aleo, as meager as it was, it still felt worth farming. I still enjoyed it. I still enjoy hunting and fighting gigantics, and if you've ever been to one of my streams where I'm fighting one of those, you know how I like to pop off. But sometimes you might not like what a game has to offer initially, then maybe you revisit it sometime later and end up falling in love with it. That was me with Final Fantasy XI. I initially couldn't stand the game and quit at around level 30 or so. Everything about the game just felt tedious for the sake of tedium to me. Then I came back to it in late 2007 and started working on leveling up and gearing up, getting to max level and learning some of the end game. So I stuck with it over the years and wound up very much enjoying it. So final thoughts? This is definitely a step in the right direction. Let's see if they can keep that momentum going. The roadmap they put out recently didn't say anything about Summoner or the Gunblade class. I suspect we'll hear about Summoner in the next headline. Do I still want to keep creating content for this game? Absolutely. But if I want to keep doing this, I have to consider branching out should something happen with PSO2. There's only 3 other games like this that interest me right now: Final Fantasy XIV, Lost Ark, and Blue Protocol. Let's see, 14 I enjoy, but that's insanely saturated right now. Just look at the Reaper video that I put out the other day. Metrics wise, that one was a flop. Lost Ark wound up pleasantly surprising me, but the jury's still out on that one. Then there's Blue Protocol, which we probably won't see until the latter half of next year or even the following year. So now I ask you, what are you looking forward to most in the coming year, online or offline? You know how much I love chopping it up with you guys in the comment section and on the streams, twitch.tv/Zeomantic. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and if you celebrate it, Merry Christmas. And remember, to thine own self be true. Until next time, farewell!